All right, welcome back to the Intentional CEO podcast. So, as last week went, our assistant Gary gave us some really good topics. We had some fun with it. Hopefully, you enjoyed that. So, we're going to continue on with this, where our assistant gives us some questions on topics that have come up throughout the week in our work with our own business, our sessions with our clients, our marketing struggles, our opportunities that we've had come in front of us as business owners. So we're going to just ask each other questions based on what Gary, our assistant, has come up with. So, all right, Tom, why don't you kick it off? What do you got for me?
All right. So Gary kicked things off this week with a good one. All right. He's getting really good at this. What's the real difference between someone who's just growing a business and someone who's leading one? And when did that shift happen for you?
Ooh, yeah, there's a huge difference between growing a business and leading a business, and not that they're mutually exclusive, but you really have to understand what phase are you in, because if you're the one growing the business, it's going to be really hard for you to lead it because you're centered in client acquisition and making sure that the deliverables are on time. When you're leading a business, you're empowering others to really be in the charge of that, and you're looking after the entire enterprise. Tom and I do this thing, and we have something called the intentional focus system inside of our intentional CEO program. And what we talk about is, who is your business now and who do you want your business to be? And we specifically say who because we want people to treat their business as a human being that you're in the charge of. Like if you had a child that you were taking care of, that's how you lead, right? That's how you're able to take care of the whole enterprise. When you're growing it, you're in one sliver of what that business needs to be led. Okay. And someone else then needs to lead you so you can focus on growing that business.
Hmm. All right. So
All right. I got one for you, Tom.
yeah, that was a stumper. I don't know why I can't come up with something there.
It's all right, pal. It's all right. It's early in the morning. I get it. All right. So here's what Gary came up for you. What's a limiting belief that you didn't even know was running the show for you?
I feel like I still have that limiting belief every single day. One of my main limiting beliefs is you don't deserve to be here. You don't deserve to have all of this. And I struggle with that. I struggle sometimes with that things are when things are going really well and it still kicks me sometimes that like you really don't deserve to be here right now, but you are. And then I'm like, the hell with you, man. I do deserve to be here. I'm working hard, I'm doing the thing. And I think you have to recognize that if you let your limiting belief like that take control of every situation, you're going to cost yourself a lot of opportunity. And I think one of the things that I've seen is that when I think I don't deserve to be here, I can see myself blocking and not wanting to do certain things and not wanting to take that next step. And it really has limited me from accessing some more of the opportunities that I think that we have. And I really struggle with that. And it's something that it was innate, it's something I grew up with. It's something that was impressed upon me that you don't always deserve everything that you have. And, that kind of set me back. But I think it's because I grew up in a very different situation. And now I have to recognize that that's no longer my situation.
Yeah, Tommy, you're the boss now, pal. Let's go.
I know that's right, right? All right, man. Let's see what's next for you. What did Gary throw out there today? You and I were talking the other day. Oh, Gary's been listening, I guess, and he went back on our notes. And what does it actually look like when a business owner is operating from certainty, not just chasing confidence? That's a good one, Gary.
So many business owners are constantly looking for confidence in their life and their business. And it's like confidence is great, but it's not what we need to build business. We need certainty. We have to know, like, this is exactly what I'm going to do today. This is exactly why I'm doing it. This is the anticipated results I should get from it. Doesn't mean that you're confident about it. It means that you're certain of why you're doing certain things. Okay. And that is a huge differentiator. And many people in the beginning of their careers, they have to get started with this confidence. Like I can do it. They have to listen to motivational videos in the morning. They have to get pumped up to do the thing. Listen, I'm never really confident in what I do. I'm certain in why I'm doing things. I'm certain in what I am doing today, but the confidence comes from applying actions, right? It's really secondary to what you need to build something that's going to be great, to go out there and help people be their best selves, to provide a product or a service. The confidence, nobody really cares if you're confident. They care if you know why and what you're doing and if you carry that out throughout the process of working with them.
Yeah, certainty definitely breeds the confidence. That makes a ton of sense.
It does. So, all right, man. You're always coaching people on this attention management. I even realized last week that it was inspired by a great book. So let's flip it. When was a time when you were distracted or scattered, and how did you pull yourself back into focus?
I think that when I I I often find myself distracted when things are going on with my kids, right? And not there's the bucket of time that I allocate to give to my family and that I give to my children. But sometimes as life comes up and things happen, I get distracted by that. Like if an email comes in, especially if an email comes in for my son from a coach that we're looking at a baseball program, that kind of distracts me, right? So what I've learned to do is I have to really reserve the time during the day where I'm going to put myself to review emails that are coming in on his account, right? And make sure I have a dedicated space for that. Because otherwise, it distracts me and takes me off of what I'm doing and what I'm working on. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. You get text notifications, you get emails that pop up, and we often get distracted by those. And I've learned that the most important way to stop doing that is to really allocate a time in your schedule that you're going to spend the time on your emails and on your text messages and getting back to people. And that really has helped me to manage my own time and attention.
Yeah, you're pretty good at it, though, I would say.
Yeah, it depends on the day. I think certain days are more scatterbrained than not, and that's unintentional. That's why you have to refocus your intention on where you're driving your attention. All right, man. Let's see. This one came up when we were working on the intentional CEO system, and Gary flagged it. Why do so many founders fall apart when it's time to scale? Not in skill, but in mindset. What breaks down for people when they're trying to scale?
Yeah, so many founders do fall apart when they finally decide I'm going to scale my business, and usually they feel like it's forced upon them. They feel like I'm supposed to do this thing, and most of them aren't really ready. And then they put these giant milestones in front of them of what scaling means. And the way I've always looked at it or described it to our clients is that scaling is when you're using your existing resources to generate more revenue. That's all it really means. Growing is when you're adding new resources to increase your revenue. So when we look at it, it's actually simpler to scale because you don't have to add new things. You just have to do with the things you have. You have to do better with them, if that makes sense. So there's a phrase from a book, Essentialism, somewhere over here, that says, "Do less but better." And I don't need you to do less, but whatever you have, you're just going to improve upon that. So if you have employees, you're going to have them produce more out of each hour that they're working for you. Okay. When you're spending time with clients, you're able to extrapolate out of that more value. And that's really what scaling is how do we take these things that we've already built and now get the most out of them? But founders fall apart because they think, I don't know how to do that. If I did, I would have already done it. The difference is when you're growing, you're managing adding these resources. So now you're not adding things. You don't have to figure things out anymore, where you can focus on now scaling that business.
Yeah, so many people don't know the difference between scale and growth, and your words get in the way. And if you don't know that, you can really screw things up. So, scaling, great. Love it. Use all the resources you got.
So, pal, we talk about sabotaging habits a lot, right? So, what's one that has kept sneaking in after you knew better? And how did you finally stop giving it power, that sabotaging behavior?
I still give it power. That's the problem. Okay. So the sabotaging habit that I see that sneaks in a lot, even though I know better, is my hyperachiever. Right. I want to get to the result. I want to get the thing functioning and working. And, especially when we change things, like when we decide to do something new, I'm always trying to figure out how to do it. And you point that out frequently to me. Like, you just just listen, like, stay here. And that to me is the hyperachiever, because I just want to get to how it's going to work and how it's going to come into play and how it's going to be orchestrated and just all the hows of it. And I get distracted by that. And that's one of the things too to remember is the sabotaging habits often distract us from what really is the task at hand. And it still comes up, and what I have learned, what has really helped me, honestly, is you prompting me at times. And sometimes we need people to prompt us to when they recognize that sabotaging habit in us. And that's the benefit of having a business partner. That we're not doing this in a silo. We're not doing it by ourselves. And this is important in all relationships, even with your employees. Your employees should know what your sabotaging habits are and be able to call you out on that stuff sometimes and be able to say, hey, hold on, check this before you wreck yourself. Check it before you wreck. What's the phrase? I don't even know. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? Like, that's really an important thing that people have to embrace, is that you have these habits, you know better, but sometimes you need someone to point them out when they occur so that you can more readily identify what that trigger was that sets you off into this whole cascade of events. And I think it's really important that, especially when you're trying to work through a situation, many of the sabotaging habits will come up because of your anxiety about what you're trying to accomplish and what the issue is all about. So you have to be really careful. And sometimes it's good to have somebody who's saying, make sure you check yourself.
Yeah, I've learned that sabotaging habits are not necessarily a terrible thing. It's just if you aren't aware of them, they can become a terrible action.
It's interesting. I was working with a client. I know I'm going off on a quick tangent. Sorry about that. But sabotaging habits do have overused strengths. That's what I wanted to point out. They're overused strengths. So that is a superpower. Sorry about that. See, when it happened right there. I couldn't help myself. All right, here's one that Gary tossed in, and I think people don't talk about enough. We've got this clear goal, us specifically. We say 28 clients at $36,000 a year, but it only works with a certain kind of mindset. So, what has to shift in someone to actually make a focused model like that work? Right, 28 clients, 36,000 per client for the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that is our goal, right? It's 28 clients, 36,000, it's $1 million in revenue just from the coaching, not from any of the other things that we do at Atomic. So if you're going to really make that work, you have to become laser focused on what that goal is. And the simplest way to do that, at least for us and what I've done many, many times, is this one plan, right? And a one plan is like, how can I just remove all the noise? We call it in our book, The Atomic Game Changer. There's a chapter called Productive Neglect. And what that really means is we're taking all these other things and productively neglecting them and saying, I'm not going to pay attention to them because I have to pay attention to this thing that's right in front of me. So the one plan that any of you can do, it's what you're saying is, look, I'm going to focus on one product and that's it. You may have 10 other products and it doesn't mean you don't sell them, but you're only going to focus on this one. If somebody else wants to buy the other one or you recognize someone needs it, that's cool. But you focus on this one product and then you focus on one market. I'm only going to sell to one market. That's all I'm really focused on talking to. Again, if someone from outside that market comes talks to you, that's great, but that's not who you're focused on. Then you're going to focus on one channel, right? Wherever you're going to do that, whether that's going to networking events or using LinkedIn, or I'm going to do Instagram or TikTok, whatever it is, one channel to speak to that market. And then you have to have one conversion tool. For Tom and I, we use our networking event that we have, that any of you can come to for free, which is really, really cool. So that is the conversion tool. We meet people in there. We find a little bit more about them, deep insights, and then that builds a relationship where we can potentially say, hey, we should meet and see if coaching is right. And then the last and final thing is you have to give this 1 year. If you're just going to do this for a week or two, you're not really going to see results. You're not going to be able to iterate and get better at it. So that's really the path to that $1 million and how you can build out any kind of a plan. So again, it's one product, one market, one channel, one conversion tool, and the most important part, 1 year.
I love that. It's very simple. One.
All right, pal. So Gary's funny. He says, "Let's talk head trash." All right, head trash, Gary. This is what we're going to talk about. What's a belief you had about success or leadership that turned out to be total garbage? And how did ditching it change things for you, Tom?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, when I looked at leaders, I thought leaders were very authoritative and very dictatorial at times. And I recognized that they were bad leaders, but I believe that they were good leaders at one point. And when I became a leader, as we lead this company every day and as we've led other people, and because we lead our clients, we demonstrate for our clients what leadership really is. It's the belief that I had to change was that it had to be authoritative and dictatorial. And I've shifted that to being about it's about learning. Leadership is about learning and listening. It's not always speaking. It's listening to what people are saying. It's listening to what is really going on and trying to gather all the information that you can really gather to see the big picture so that you can create the big picture and offer that to other people. But if you don't listen, you don't get the big picture. And that was a really big shift that I took in my own leadership style. I When I first became a leader when I was much younger, I was in my early 30s. I definitely, thought it was very different and I didn't listen to as many people as I needed to. And now that I listen, I feel that I've developed into a better leader and a better overall person. So that's really what's changed.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the most important parts of being a leader is listening, right? You got to listen.
Mhm. Absolutely. All right, so let's go practical for a second. Gary reminded us that during a client debrief, when someone's overwhelmed, what's the first thing you help them build? Not a hack, not a trick, but a real shift in how they operate.
Yeah, man. When our clients get overwhelmed, or even when I get overwhelmed, you have to change how you're operating things. That's why you're getting overwhelmed in the first place. It's because of the way that you operate, and really, what overwhelm comes down to is your subconscious knows that you have the ability to do something about this situation, but you're not doing it. You may not know really what it is that you should do or how you can do these things, but there's definitely something that can be done. So without having a hack or a trick or anything like that, what it really is about having some awareness on, okay, well, what do I have? What options do I have in this situation? So when you're overwhelmed, at least for me, I have to step back and just like look at the landscape of what in my capacity, in my competency, do I have the ability to go out and effectuate some sort of a change? And when I look at that, I now see these options in front of me and I can start narrowing them down into like, okay, here's the one that I'm going to take action on. And then when you start taking action, that removes overwhelm because whether or not you're good at that action, you start making progress. You start seeing some sort of result, whether it's not the one you wanted or it is the one you wanted. And then you know what to do next. So for me, that's overwhelm is it really comes down to setting that time aside and saying what can I do with who I am and what I have to effectuate the change.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's whittling down to the most specific thing you can, and then all the other noise just goes away. It just disappears. It really tunes into the signal. That's really
Mm.
great.
So, Tom, you've said before that discipline isn't about doing more; it's about doing the right things with an intention, right? So, can you give us a moment where you finally stopped grinding and started leading?
Hmm. That's a tough question. I'm going to say this. I'm going to answer it this way. The intention between a manager and a leader, because that's what I think about, right? A lot of people mix this up and they get confused in what management is versus what leadership is. And management is doing things right, and leadership is doing the right thing. And the intention has to be that you do the right thing. You don't always have to do things right. And that's really where the paradigm shift happens because when you're grinding it out, and I've experienced this, like when we as we do every single day, we grind out certain things. And it's hard to always be in that role of leadership because sometimes I'm so focused on doing things right, I'm not always thinking about doing the right thing. And that becomes a very difficult struggle. And you have to remember what is the right thing to do, because each day you're going to be asked to do a myriad of things, and you're going to try to grind things out, but you have to constantly ask yourself, is this the right thing to do right now, or should I be doing something else? And this is where priority setting is so important. And that's really what changed me and helped me to do this better, is what's the priority for today, because the priority is usually the right thing that needs to be done, and then just go do that thing. So setting the priority is really what shifted it for me.
Yeah, man, too many people avoid priorities or they have too many priorities, so nothing's a priority.
Exactly. All right, last one here for you, Adam. And Gary saved a good one. You said earlier this week you can't run a new business with an old identity, and that landed. So, what does that mean in practice, and how have you had to live that out?
Yeah, man, if you're gonna try to build a new business with an old identity, it's gonna end up the way the old thing was, and that's not what you wanted. Otherwise, you would have stayed there. And most people I see that are building businesses, they're stuck in this practitionership, and really they're not a business owner. They're self-employed, which there's nothing wrong with being self-employed. But if you truly desire building a business, you can't be a self-employed practitioner. You have to actually build a company that has all these support systems in them. And it doesn't mean you need 3,000 employees, but you have to now lead the company. You have to be a business owner. And what I see too many people, and I've been guilty of it myself, is they stay in the practitionership and they want to own and build a company, but they're doing all the things that they would have usually done as an employee for someone else in the past, and that doesn't allow you to build a business. So that's where the identity has to shift. It's like, hey, am I a CEO or am I the sales guy? Am I a CEO or am I the person that delivers the product and service? Am I a CEO or am I the guy that goes in and works through all the funnels and answers all the emails? So you have to really make this giant choice to build a business of like, all right, I am no longer, even though you're excellent at being a practitioner, that is no longer what I am responsible for here. I am responsible for building a business and giving that business everything it needs to thrive and grow and have consistent and sustainable success. So if you're not willing to have that shift in your identity, then you have to just accept that, all right, I'm just going to be self-employed. I have created a job for myself. I'm going to create revenue and I have some extra freedom. I also have some extra responsibilities, but stay in that identity. Don't say I want to build a business and then still stick to being a practitioner.
Yeah, that shift from employee to CEO is such a difficult shift for so many people. And you got to pick the lanes that you're going to swim in, and you either make that choice or you don't. And that's the difference between your success of your business and the not success of the business.
All right, here's the last one for you, Tom. What advice do you give to clients about staying present and protecting their energy?
Mm. Yeah, so being present and protecting your energy is critical, and you have to identify who the energy sucks are in your universe. In order to protect your energy and protect, your and be more present, you really have to be better in control of your sabotaging habits. And the people pleaser is one of them, right? When you constantly give yourself to people and you constantly sacrifice what you need for you, it takes you out of a lot of moments. It only makes you focused on other people. And when you're focused on other people or other things, you're not necessarily present. And if you're going to be present, you have to use the energy that you have for yourself to really just hone in and live in the moment. And part of being present too is getting rid of that anxiety about the future. We Anxiety is only about the future. Anxiety does not exist when you're in the present moment, because if you're truly in the present moment, and ask yourself this right now, are you in the present moment? And if you're in the present moment, there is no anxiety, there is no fear, and there is no doubt. But if something is nagging at you or bothering you, you are not being present. And be very aware of who those energy sucks are in your life, who drains your energy, and limit the time that you spend with that person. Because if you limit that time, you can be more present in the other parts of your life that you need to be present in?
Tom and I get our energy drained all the time, and it's usually from prospecting. It's usually from all the nonsense that all of you as business owners have to deal with as well. Running ads and going and engaging with people in DMs and getting on sales calls and coffee chats and all this other nonsense. And one of the things that we have realized is we have developed such a great ability to have relationships with people. And the places that we've always done that well is networking. Throughout my 25-year career, I've met incredible people through networking. That's even how Tom and I met each other, was through networking. And what we've realized is we're kind of done. We're fed up with all the traditional methods of prospecting. And as you might have heard earlier, we only really try to work with 28 people every single year. So we don't need this crazy system and funnel that goes through thousands of potential opportunities. We're not selling widgets. We're selling advice. We're selling relationships. We're selling support. We're selling guidance. We're selling a partnership with our clients. So what we've decided to do is to go back to our roots of networking. So we're doing them once a month in person and once a month online. And yeah, our whole intention there is to hopefully build a relationship with someone and see that, wow, we can work together and help them. But in that process, we're there to help everybody else. That's what networking has always been for me, is I've gone into it of, it's not about me, it's can I help all those other people in the room. And then the byproduct is, if everybody comes to that room with the same mindset, I have 20, 30 people that are trying to help me. And I've just flourished that way. I've built the right kind of business for me and for my clients throughout the years doing it that way. So um, we have these currently; they're free. You can go to our website, Atomic Business Coaching, or go to be the.ceo. I like that new handle. So go to be the.ceo, and there's plenty of options on there for you to hook up with us. Come to either our virtual online networking event, which is small and intimate, or come to our big in person one. And hopefully we'll see you there. All right. Have a great day.